Hi everyone, this is Elizabeth from the Community Library, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make a squash book, or they're also sometimes called explosion books. And this video goes along with a kit that you probably would have registered for, but if you follow along without a kit, it's pretty easy to kind of do it on your own. So just before we start, I wanted to show you kind of what they look like because it's hard to get an idea when you're just looking at a picture. So this is one that I made, and it's just a little book or a card, and then when you open it up, it kind of explodes, and this is really close up, so it's kind of hard to see, but it kind of expands to make a bigger book. And you can do them in different colors or different sizes. This is another one. But yeah, so that is what we'll be making today. And if you registered for the kit, what you will have gotten is an instruction sheet that has kind of step-by-step. You get 2 pieces of chipboard. They're pre-cut to be like 4 1/4 inch squares. And then you also get 2 origami paper sheets. And then there's also a total of 6 8-inch squares of paper. There should be 3 of each color. And that's mostly because I wanted to kind of coordinate it and also give you some options for when you were making the book. So like this is what the cover will look like. So the cover is going to be the pattern of the origami paper, but then the pages, you can kind of do whatever color you want. You can even mix and match the 2 colors I gave you, but I did try and make it at least somewhat coordinated so it's not super ugly. So yeah, that is the intro here, so we can get started. So the first thing we're going to do is make the covers. So you can set aside the bigger squares, and all we're going to need is the 2 origami papers and 2 chipboard pieces, and you're also going to want to have glue for this step. Now you can use like liquid glue, but I've found that just a glue stick works better. And if you want to, sometimes I like using the nicer crafting glue sticks, but an Elmer's glue stick worked just fine for me, so if that's all you have, that's perfectly fine. And then also you're going to want a piece of scrap paper for this step, just because as we're gluing, it'll probably get all over the table, so I just put a piece of paper down. Okay, so first we're going to do one cover at a time. So take 1 piece of chipboard and 1 origami paper, and you're going to want to put the origami paper pattern side down. And then the first step we're going to do is gluing this to the origami paper. So if we take the glue stick, we're just going to apply glue to all of one side of the chipboard. And you're going to want to be pretty liberal with the glue. Make sure you get it all around, and I'm always really messy with these glue sticks. But you just want to make sure it's pretty well covered. And then once you have that all glued, take the origami paper pattern side down, and we're just going to flip it and put it kind of in the center. And then you just want to kind of smooth it so that it sticks, and make sure there's no little bubbles or anything, just so that it's all nice and smooth on the cover. So now we're going to finish doing the cover, and the way that I've seen people describe this is kind of like you're wrapping a present. So that's kind of how you want to think about it. Because we're just going to kind of fold these ends to make it nice and neat to make the first cover. So what you'll do is first we're just going to apply glue all along one side of these leftover edges. So we'll just glue that, and you want to get all the way down to the corners. And then once it's all glued, you're going to fold it over just nice and evenly, like you're wrapping a present. So that is one side. And then we're just going to do the same to the opposite side of the paper. So we'll finish doing that. You'll be using a lot of glue for these books, you'll find out. But okay, So now that we have that, I'm just going to do the same thing, kind of folding it over so that it is nice and neat. So now we have the two sides glued down, and now we have to take care of the other two sides. So this is kind of where the wrapping a present idea comes from. So if we just folded this like this, it wouldn't be as neat. You can do this, but we'll do an extra step just to make sure it looks nice and neat. So just like you're wrapping a present, you're just gonna fold over the corner here so that when it's all assembled, you won't see any overhanging paper. So there's that, and then I do just like to kind of glue these little corners down. It keeps it a little easier to do for the next step. So we'll just glue our little corners down, and then we're going to finish by just folding over this paper here. So just like before, you want to apply glue all along this side here. Probably should have put some paper down. Okay, so now we'll fold it over, and you just want to make sure it is nice and secure. That's really all that matters, because when the book is all finished, this is going to be hidden anyways, so it's just to make sure that the outside looks really nice and neat when it's folded over. So we're going to do the same steps over here on the next one, and we'll just fold the corners here. And I'll just glue them down really quick. And then we'll apply glue all the way to the edge to finish folding over on the cover. Okay. Then we'll fold it over. All right. So that is it for the covers, basically. So now you can see we have our nice little outside, which looks nice with the pattern, and then the inside is flat with all the corners tucked in. So you're going to repeat the same exact steps on the second piece of chipboard that you have, so we have two covers. Okay, so we have the two covers all finished and glued together. Now what I recommend doing while we are going to do the next step is you can put these covers just under something heavy while we are waiting or finishing the folding of the pages, which will be our next step, just so that everything stays nice and pressed together and nothing pops up. I usually use like a big heavy book that I have lying around. So our next step is going to be folding the pages of our squash book so they are ready to go in. So this is probably, I would say, the most complicated step. If you're not super comfortable with origami, just take it slow. I also gave you extra pages, so if you mess up on one or you feel like you mess up on one, you can try it with a different one. So we're going to take 3 pages of the 8x8 squares, and like I said before, you can either do all 3 of the same color, you can do 2 of one and 1 of another, whatever you like. And we're just going to start with 1 of the pages. So I'll go really slowly, and I also wrote the instructions, but like I think everyone's probably familiar with, origami is easier once you see someone doing it in person. Okay, so we have our page. So our first step is just going to be to fold it over in half. This way. I think some people call it a hot dog fold. Well, I'm not sure. And you're just going to crease it. It doesn't need to be super tight, or you don't even need to use a bone folder or anything like that. But just fold it in half, and then we're going to open it this way like we're reading a book, and then we're going to fold it upwards like this in half the other way. And it doesn't need to be super perfect, but you do kind of want to line your corners up. And then we're just going to crease it. And then you're going to have, we open it like this, and you can kind of see it's staying open almost like a book on the table. But we want to flip it over now so that there's a little peak facing upwards. So it almost looks like a little tent on the table. And that'll just help us with the next fold and the kind of explosion book that we were talking about. So we have the little tent here. You're just going to turn the paper kind of diagonally, and then you want to fold it up like this diagonally, so into a big triangle. And then we're just going to fold it like this. Okay, and so now when we open our folds, that's all the folding we have to do for these. But you can see this, and if you just kind of push up on these diagonal lines, it kind of pops open. I don't know if you noticed that. So here we have that, but if we push upwards from the bottom on these diagonal lines, it kind of pops open like that, and you're ended up with kind of like this, again, like mountain design. It's kind of rounded. And now we're just going to collapse it together. So if you push in on these diagonal folds, you can kind of see, hopefully, that it'll be really easy just to squish it kind of into a square like that. So I'm going to fold the next page on camera again so you can kind of see. But now we have a little square that opens like that. And that kind of helps us with the explosion effect. So that's all the folding you have to do for these, and we're going to do the same exact thing on all 3 pages. So I'll get the next page just to show you again if you're a little confused. So we have this page here. We're going to fold it in half long ways here, crease it, and then open it up like you're reading a book, and then we're going to fold it upwards in half again. Try and line it up a little bit, and crease it like that. And then when we open it, we're going to flip it over so that it sits like a tent on top of the table, and we're going to turn it diagonally so it looks like a diamond, and then fold it upwards into a triangle. Crease that. Okay, and then now if you press from underneath, you just push it up a little bit and hold it like that, it'll pop open, and then you can collapse it into a square. And we'll just do it one more time, why not? It's quick enough. Okay, so we'll do the last page again. And what I really liked about this is it's not a ton of folding, because although I like doing origami, I am not very good at it. So this makes it a lot easier to do. And it's pretty simple folding. Do that. We're going to flip it over and make a big triangle. And then we'll just pop it open, and then we're going to squish it together to make a square. Okay, so now you should have 3 little squares, and so our next step is going to be assembling the pages. Okay, so now that we have our squares together, we need to assemble our pages. So I've been having some technical issues. So the paper is purple now, and I'm just going to kind of show you on these 2 pages. So we have 3 pages together, but they need to kind of nest into each other, and we are gluing the pages together. So as you can kind of see, we need to glue these 2 squares. And this is probably the hardest part to explain for me, so I'll kind of show you. The middle one is going to be, so the middle page is going to be kind of unfolding away from you, if you kind of see that. And then this other one that we're going to glue it to is just going to kind of get nested in there. So I've already applied glue to this page. And we're just going to glue these squares together. And you want to kind of line everything up so that it fits. And the pages are glued together. And then we have our first 2 pages glued together. So now if we collapse this square and collapse this one, you can kind of see how it will explode or open in the final book. So now that we have those 2 assembled, we need our final 3rd page. And like I said, we're going to glue these 2 squares together here. So let me glue this one down here. Just going to glue it up around. Okay. And we're going to put this square there, kind of line them up so the corners match and everything will fold nicely together. And then just kind of press everything to make sure it's all stuck together. And I got a lot of extra glue here, so I'm just going to kind of scrape that off because I don't want to glue the pages of our book together. That would not make a very good book. Okay, so as you can kind of see, we now have our book, and if you did it the right way, it should kind of want to collapse for you. Because what's really important for these is that the middle one is facing away from you or folding away from you, and these other ones are folding towards you. And feel free, if you're having problems with this part, feel free to email me with any questions you're having, and I will be sure to help you. Okay, so now we have our pages together, and our last step is going to be to assemble our book together. Okay, so now that we have all of our pages glued together, we can go and grab our 2 covers that we made earlier and our glue, and we are going to assemble everything together for the book. So basically what we're going to be doing is gluing our covers onto the book like this to make a little sandwich. So the first thing we usually do is that you want to always think of applying glue to the smaller object, and since this end paper here is smaller than the cover, we're just going to apply glue on all of this end page here. Like I said, you always want to be liberal because this is what's going to hold your book together. Okay, so now we'll flip it over, and you want to kind of be careful to place it in the middle-ish of your cover. It doesn't have to be perfectly centered, but just so that it is kind of decently in the center. And if you open it, you can just kind of smooth everything down. And that is the first cover glued. And we're going to do the same exact thing on this other side, applying glue to the whole page. Okay, and with this cover, it's really more important to kind of make sure that the 2 covers line up together than exactly where this square is going to end up. So I usually just kind of put it on, and then you can just kind of make sure that the covers line up, and it shouldn't be too off. Just kind of make sure to smooth it out, and then you can see there that's all smoothed together. And that is basically the explosion book. So now as we open it, we can see we have the covers on there. and then you have your pages. So from here, it would be the finishing up steps, which I will tell you about in a minute. So now that you have your book all assembled, what you can do is, just like we did with the covers, you can put it under something heavy, like a heavy book, for at least an hour, I'd say, just to make sure everything stays stuck together. And then after that, it's basically just filling the book with whatever you like. So our book is about 4 inches. Each of these squares should be about 4 inches. So as you choose to decorate, that's kind of how you would measure things out. And I didn't provide anything to decorate the books with because that's kind of the fun part. And I'll just show you this example. So this one is one of the first ones I made, and it's just kind of a collage. So I took pieces of an old book and different magazines and just kind of made a little collage. But you can include anything. It can be like a little photo album or a letter, especially with these. For this one I used a thicker chipboard, which is something else you can do to kind of customize it. And I don't have too many decorated, just because that's the hardest part for me, is deciding what I want to put in the book. But this is another one that was inspired by this tutorial I found online, where she had students kind of cut up their own artwork to fill the books, but this is just an old book that I cut up and put the art in there. And especially with these squares, what can be really helpful is once you figure out what size fits best in the square, like I said, it's usually about 4 inches, you can create like a little template, like a little bit smaller than 4 inches, that you can just trace over. If you're using, like I did, like an old book, you can trace over it, cut it out, and then just stick it in there as a background. Because all the squares should be around the same size. Another thing too I will add is that sometimes you can also add ribbons to tie them shut. Like these, they don't really pop open, but if yours is still kind of like flopping open like this, you can add a ribbon. Usually they set around 20 to 24 inches. And all you do is just put it in before we glue the covers on. You just kind of add it onto one side and then glue it on with the cover, and then you have a little ribbon to tie it around. And I'll also show you, you can scale it up. So like I said, our books that we made are 4 inches, and this is one I made that's 6 inches, and it's really easy to scale up. The only thing was with the cover, I didn't have origami paper big enough to cover the whole thing, so it looks a little funny on the edges. But it's basically the same concept, and it's, you probably can't see any of that, but it's just a bigger version of the same thing. So I hope you like that. Feel free to email me if you have any questions, and thanks for watching.